Graveyard Keeper is an interesting game. Are we selling burgers and beers at a witch burning? What is that thing? Wait a minute, they're brothers? Yeah, so buckle up for this one folks, because it's gonna be a doozy. That being said, if you do enjoy the video, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And let's get right into this wacky adventure. Our journey to 100%ing Graveyard Keeper begins in the void, face to face with a mysterious man. Probably the most normal thing that happens in this game, to be honest. You see, we were swiftly taken from our love in the mortal world, and now have been destined to become a Graveyard Keeper. Upon waking up in my new home, I dug up a talking amnesia-filled skull called Jerry. I met a communist idea-filled donkey, proceeded to take his juicy corpse, performed the foul act of removing its flesh, took it to the nearby graveyard, buried said body, and bada bing bada boom, I am now a certified Graveyard Keeper. God, I love this game. Soon after, I met up with the new boss, and one of the 6 main village visitors, the bishop. Basically, he told me if I get my act together and make the graveyard look nice, then he'll open up the church for me. I was then introduced to all of these superb looking tech trees, which I am familiar with because if you've followed my channel for a while now, you'll know that I have already played 100 Days of Graveyard Keeper in another video. And to those who have been waiting for more Graveyard Keeper, then you're welcome. Which is also why some achievements won't pop, I've simply already got them. You'll see them start to appear later on though, I promise. Making my way into the village, I paid a visit to the local tavern, tastefully named the Dead Horse. A terrible name for a tavern, but I digress. I met Miss Chain, the wife of Heradric, and Heradric, the man himself who runs the Dead Horse. I asked him a bunch of things, but most importantly, I can sell the burial certificates to him that I get from burying bodies. Not a bad way to make a bit of coin. Right after, I paid a visit to Cresvold, the local blacksmith, to fulfill a favor from Heradric, who taught me the art of sharpening tools with a grindstone and a whetstone. And I took my new sword to some pesky slimes. On my way back home, Jerry jump scared me from behind a bush, all to tell me that I had a cellar to teach me a few new technologies, and that if I get him a beer, he'll tell me all about how to get home back to my love. So I went to check out the cellar under my house, only to find a scary looking bald man yelling at a gate. Just what you love to see when you're moving into a new home. Just when I thought things couldn't get any weirder, they did. I awoke to Yorick the ghost floating over my bed the next morning. He was complaining about some dead fellow in the graveyard, and gave me an exhumation permission as a nudge in the right direction. So with said permission, I dug up the perpetrator and quite literally chucked the body down the river. Don't forget to like the video if you too deal with annoying people by tying them up in body bags and chucking them down the river. After cleaning up some bare bushes in the graveyard to start my cleanup for the bishop, I decided to use some water from my well and flour from the cellar to make dough, which I could cook into bread. Because without food, energy can only be refilled by sleeping, so food will become very handy. As the sun was setting, I found myself back at the Dead Horse, where I came across the second village visitor, Miss Charm. I tried talking to her, but she told me to come back when I've got more faith in myself. Just like every other woman I've ever tried to talk to. I did also meet Wagner, a semi-well-known poet who wants to woo the likes of Miss Charm. Apparently he's too lazy to get himself paper and ink, so I'll worry about that later. Instead, Heradric gave me a beer for helping Cresvold, which I took all the way back home for Jerry. In return, he gifted me with the knowledge of how to get home, through a portal on Witch Hill. As for who, what, when, why, and how, well, I can't expect an amnesia-filled skull to know the rest, now can I? Yorick was back the morning of day 3. He was glad to have the annoying guy gone, not so glad about the whole crippling reality that is being a ghost. But he taught me about spiritual attributes. It looks complicated, it's because it kind of is. Basically, red skull's bad, white skull's good, get more or less red and white skulls from removing or inserting body parts or embalming. With these 3 easy steps, you too can become your very own Graveyard Keeper. Outside, I was having a mooch around home and found that I have a garden. I was then on my way to see Heradric about getting permission to use it when I heard the juicy corpse bell go off. I quickly wanted to catch the merchant before he left, but surprise surprise, I had just missed him. It was a solemn walk back home that night. To make up for it though, I unlocked my first technologies: soft spears, primitive foraging, and sawing, just to get me started. As the days passed over, I dumped the body into once was the annoying guy's open grave and got some sleep. After some rest, I made use of the day establishing and crafting a sawhorse, a wooden anvil, and a furnace for the workyard. These will give me access to craft and make basic materials. It gets a lot more complicated later on, but for now it's a good start nonetheless. I popped by the tavern shortly after to trade the burial certificate to Reii, and he gave me permission to use the garden, but to check in with the merchant when he visits since it's his property. And if it hasn't become obvious already, they're called visitors because these characters only visit the village on their scheduled day. There's 6 visitors, 6 days in a week. For some reason, 1 visitor a day, they only return on their day. I'm sure you get it. South of the wheat fields, I came across the farmer and his son. He sells seeds and crops. Makes a lot of sense actually. But now that I have permission to use the garden, I'm sure we'll be in business a lot, you and me, Mr. Farmer Man. Back home, I unlocked a couple more technologies, beekeeping for, I don't know, and firewood. I collected sticks before bedtime. The following day began with some care work on the graveyard. Turns out I got a few stone and wood repair kits with the job title, so I used them to fix up a few busted gravestones and fences. On my way into the village, I stumbled across village visitor number 3, the Inquisitor. While we walked up the path to Witch Hill, he kept yapping about a dark cult rising, righteous anger, witch burnings, yeah, stuff like that. And then he really did burn a quote-unquote witch right in front of my eyes. I guess that's one way to assert your dominance. Like the video if you too assert dominance by burning witches. Out of fear more than anything, I agreed to be his friend. In doing so, I agreed to come back another time to talk favors. In the meantime, I got the hell out of there. I proceeded to bury another corpse in the graveyard, unlocked the hard spear's technology, made some wooden markers on the sawhorse, and used them to spruce up the hideous sight that was my graveyard. My quality rating had jumped from -30 to -5 though, which was getting me all that much closer to having my own church. After a few hours recuperating from my nighttime mission, I headed out to the village once again. I came across a loony looking man named Dig. Definitely came across that way too. He said if I can get him some honey, then he'd teach me how to make cake. I love cake! But that would have to wait as I was out this way by the lighthouse to see the 4th village visitor, the astrologer. In order to gain his trust and ask for help, I'd have to give him a skull, for reasons unknown. The lighthouse keeper close by also tasked me to bring him moths in exchange for a fishing rod, so that I too could join the exciting world of fishing. On the way home, I got a little distracted meeting regular villagers and being stung by bees while taking their honey. And that night, I somehow ended up fighting bats close to home, but they disappeared. Magic. No doubt they saw how scary looking I was and thought, screw that. The bishop was back today, and the thought at the front of my brain was to get the graveyard rating up to 5 to unlock the church. So I unlocked the simple gravestone technology, so that I could build quality additions to my graveyard. However, I found out that I needed to unlock the carpenter's workbench to craft them. And therein lies the crux of this game, is that often technologies are tied to other technologies. But of course I did not have enough red tick points to unlock it. So instead I built a chopping spot for my workyard. Actually, I should explain tick points. Tick points are what you need to unlock the different technologies. Red tick points are obtained from anything that involves physical labor, like handcrafting skills. Green tick points are obtained from organic materials, nature, and stuff like that. Blue tick points are obtained from spiritual knowledge, like immaterial things. There are many ways to obtain tick points, but we'll get into that later. For now, I did some surgery on a fresh corpse thanks to our communist donkey friend, fought off some bats in the swamp above my house, and collected a few bits of iron ore to smelt in the furnace. Despite the surgical mistakes I made last night, the next morning I buried the body anyway, because money is money. I then turned wood billets into firewood and put on some more bread in the kitchen, all before returning to the graveyard to add some more wooden markers, and somehow ended up going backwards in quality. I think burying that body was a mistake. Should have just chucked it down the river like a normal person. It was time to meet the merchant today, although I did chuck some more iron into the furnace. And then it was time. Just south of the dead horse, waiting for me was the 5th villager visitor, the merchant. We ended up cutting a deal about the garden. I produced the goods from the garden and we'd go into a long-term deal where we become business partners that's profitable for both parties. And I also offered to help with his hiccups. I circled up to the tavern to sell a burial certificate to Heradric before returning to the farmer. Here I bought some of the seeds necessary to win the affection of my new friend the merchant, and in the garden is where I planted them. Right after that I unlocked the improvement technology and decay technology in the farming section, crafted a trunk to hold all of my farming needs, and made my first 2 compost heaps. All before dealing with another juicy corpse and adding it to my graveyard. I spent a good chunk of day 10 pottering around the yard making more wooden markers. I wanted to replace the old damaged ones with fresh new markers. As for the rest of the day, I unlocked the stone cutting technology and crafted a stone cutter for the workyard, where I made a thrilling discovery that I could make gravestones. I collected nearby stone for a bit, I counted how many I'd need in the graveyard, and then got to work crafting them all, because these gravestones have a quality rating of 2 over the measly 1 of a stone marker. And for my efforts, my graveyard shot up to the rating of 7. The bishop will be very pleased. Before it got too late, I made my way up to the Inquisitor. Thankfully, he wasn't burning any more witches, but he did ask me to help the Holy Inquisition by running a few errands. Specifically, he needed firewood and flyers for the next burning, of course. What'd you think you'd need them for? Marshmallows around a campfire? Actually, that sounds way better than burning witches. I passed by Donkey on the way home, which meant I had a corpse to take care of. And after a good night's sleep, to the graveyard is where the body went. The dead horse is where I headed next. I wanted some cash money for the certificates I had. I extended my journey out to the lighthouse to find the astrologer. I had saved him one of my finest skulls, and to be honest, he was neither here nor there about it. With some trust gained, I asked about the portal on Witch Hill. Apparently, the astrologer once had a friend who knew a lot about it, but the information was locked behind a gate and in a diary somewhere in the church cellar. I was given a key that may help, and I get the feeling I'm gonna have to talk to the crazy gate-hating bald guy. For now, I made it home that evening to see Donkey drop off another body, but instead I thought it would be funny to endure a swarm of bats for some honey. Ah yes, much better than removing blood and fat from a dead body. All it takes is a bit of sleep to remedy an onslaught of bats. I was right back to it the following morning, burying that body from yesterday. I told the boss man of my hard work with the graveyard and he was thrilled. He opened up the church, got a little carried away talking about sermons, and he let me have a go. Well, at least I tried. I got some faith and the bishop told me I had to perform sermons every week. I didn't mind though because faith will become a pretty valuable resource soon, so I'll be sure to show up as the newly appointed prior of the church. He then told me to talk to him about a favor, but then it just kind of disappeared. Maybe the ground opened up and swallowed him? I don't know, maybe he just did a runner? Either way, I think I'll have to talk to him next week. I explored down into the church basement and found a bunch of old scroll shelves to demolish, not to mention the study table. I got right to it, turning paper into science and using a little faith I had to study blood, which in turn gave me a bunch of my first blue tech points. This is all part of alchemy, but I'll get to that later on because it can get pretty confusing. After studying a few more things for even more blue tech points, I decided to unlock the glass, tools, insects, business of faith, comfort of faith, light of faith, and cremation technologies. An already busy day was made busier by harvesting my carrots, beets, and lettuce. The crop waste I can turn into peat and maggots. And after a quick stop to the farmer and to Heradric to sell a burial certificate, I could plant down another batch of crops. In comparison, day 14 was a lot less hectic. I crafted a carpenter's workbench in the workyard, having unlocked the technology to do so. I then made wooden planks and wooden wedges to clear away the path between my cellar and the church cellar. I've now just given the crazy gate-hating bald guy access to my house. I then did the same to the other fallen debris, clearing out a second path. The following morning I got right to making myself a new set of tools. I also remembered that my cellar has a shortcut to the village. Now that is very handy. I used it to get all the way back to Dig. Dig had waited long enough for his honey, so I handed it over and I got a cake recipe in return, just like he promised. Back home I unlocked the transplanting technology, paper crafting technology, and writing technology, all of which will come in handy later on. Before bed I thought to slice a piece of human flesh into sliced meat, which I cooked. Why, you may ask? Actually I don't know. It was on day 16 that I finally faced my fears and talked to the crazy gate-hating bald guy, the last of the village visitors, Snake. It wouldn't take threatening to convince him, but maybe some faith would. But I had none left over, so instead I spent a while manufacturing materials in the workyard to make another bench and candelabra for the church interior. You see, the church has its own quality rating separate from the graveyard, and to achieve more successful sermons, I'll have to spruce it up a bit to attract more churchgoers. Afterwards, I mined the rest of the iron outcroppings from the swamp just above my home, put them into the furnace to smelt, and I called it a night. The Inquisitor was back in town today, and I thought he'd like to have some of the firewood I promised to get him. Back at the garden, I harvested another round of beets, lettuce and carrots. I did some bartering with the farmer for more seeds, and extended the garden with those seeds that night. The nerves of my first proper sermon being just a day away led me to spend the following day in the church, adding another candelabra and church bench, bringing my total to 10 quality, which, it seems, I was stoked about. I also made a desk down in the church basement, perfect for writing flyers for the Inquisition. All in good time, however. For now, I unlocked the advanced forging technology and had a check-in with Donkey. It seems my comrade's status with Donkey had gone down the drain. Apparently, I was exploiting his non-paid labor now that I owned everything. And he left me with a smelly, disgusting present. And a poo. Get it? Cause the corpse is smelly and disgusting. Like the poo? You know what? Never mind. For good luck on my big day, I buried the corpse the following morning, and topped it with a gravestone to what I hope will impress my congregation. I don't know what I was worried about, my first of many sermons went down a treat. They even leave me donations, and I'm not complaining about free profit. Outside, the bishop finally got to ask that favour, to make him cheap bowls for a soup kitchen he's gonna open, naturally to make him look good. With a comment like that, I should say that each visitor, the bishop, Miss Charm, the merchant, Snake, the Inquisitor, and the astrologer represent 6 of the 7 deadly sins. I'll let you figure out what one is which, but it becomes pretty obvious. Anyway, moving on, I planted down a few more carrot seeds in the garden before trading another burial certificate with Heradric, and swapped out my archaic wooden anvil with a more advanced one in the workyard. I stayed up way past my bedtime that night, simply to pick flowers and hope that I'd gather a few moths alongside them. After a revitalizing sleep to gain some energy back for the day, I put it to use building a trunk for the church and fixing a bridge that led due west of the church. Out here is a swamp-themed maze. At the middle lies a Haggerty witch full of secrets. And yet, despite having played this game before, on multiple occasions by the way, I forgot how to do the maze. It's genuinely not that difficult. Ah well, embarrassment aside, as the night was falling, I harvested some more crops from the garden and decided some rest might do me some good. It was a big day for the merchant and me. Not only had I picked some hiccup grass from the swamp yesterday, curing his hiccups and taking away his ability to taste, setting off a terrible curse given to him by a fortune teller and taking away the one thing that makes him happy, but I also gave him the crops he wanted. Long story short, I had to talk to the swamp witch about curing his dud taste buds, and I'd have to get a trade license through the Royal Services box, so that we can become business partners to create a booming food service company, to corner the food market, to generate wealth beyond our imaginations, and the merchant can become the keeper of the king's kitchen. No stress at all. The writing supplies technology is something I unlocked later on, and overnight I scavenged around for berries and moths hiding in the moonlight. I'm so hardcore, I didn't even sleep. Sleep is for the weak! In the church basement, I began to use a scroll shelf I had built to store all things writing, like stories I'd gotten from talking to the visitors. Following some backbreaking work in the yard, I used the materials I had made to craft a church workbench next to my desk. Very handy for crafting writing supplies and various miscellaneous things too. I was overjoyed to see Donkey is back, is what I would say if I was overjoyed to see him, because I wasn't. I was underjoyed to see him. He was on strike and demanded oil for his squeaky wheels, a day off on bishop days, and payment in the form of carrots. But I could not argue because, well, he's the only corpse carrying donkey on the market, so I was obliged to meet his demands. In the morgue, Jerry vaguely enlightened me about getting help from some quote-unquote helpers, and to talk to one of them in the church cellar. I'll save that for when I do have access to the church cellar. In the meantime, I cremated my first corpse, and I got a little too excited by the looks of things. The great thing is, you still get burial certificates when cremating corpses, making it a great alternative to either dumping the body down the river or burying the body full of red skulls and tanking my graveyard quality rating. Over at the Dead Horse, I traded a burial certificate and 7 carrot cutlets for some coin. I moved on from plain old bread to carrot cutlets as my main food source. I cannot wait for the supervision to kick in. Last night I collected all the moths I needed, so the lighthouse keeper was happy to trade over the rod for the moths. It just so happened the astrologer was right nearby too, and I spent some hard-earned silver on a pen and ink, so that back at the church basement I could make those beautiful flyers for the Holy Inquisition. A wonderful morning sermon was followed by an equally wonderful morning corpse cremation. They say to start your day off with a win, and I've just had 2, so not too shabby. I took the long way to the village that evening, but it was worth it, because after trading a certificate with Heredric, I picked up a teleport stone, probably by far the most useful item in this game. It works exactly how you'd expect it to, it just teleports you. Which is very cool! Once again I took off to the swamp maze, and this time memory kicked in. I passed by the fishing spot, past many ore outcroppings, and wound my way inwards towards the centre. I met with Clotho, the swamp witch, in the middle. The conversation between us was flowing quite nicely. The only problem is she couldn't remember who she was. I don't know what it is about this world, but amnesia seems to be the new trend around here. She also taught me the beginnings of alchemy. Like I said, I'm gonna save that speech for later because alchemy is a real brain scratcher. Having unlocked the clay and mining technologies last night, I built up a potter's wheel in the workyard, followed by some clay gathering from the clay deposits just below my church. Paired with some water and you have a recipe for cheap ceramic bowls. Perfect for the bishop's soup kitchen. Too bad I'd have to wait another week for him. Instead, I used the rest of the daylight fishing, the bane of my existence as you'll find out later on, extracting body parts from a fresh juicy corpse, and lighting up the night burning the very same body for another burial certificate. After trading it with Heredric, I picked up and replanted a bunch of carrots. Special shout out to the farmer for always providing seeds. And I lit up another corpse. I didn't watch this one though, I coolly walked away without looking at it. I'd saved up enough faith to face Snake again, and being his day I thought I'd go and confront him and let my faith take charge. But wait, Snake? What do you mean you're busy? Hey, no, come back here, man. No, you're not busy. Stop, I say, stop it. It's your day for crying out loud, Snake, stop. Oh great, he's gone. Just like my dad. Disclaimer, I have a very lovely father. Well, with that plan out the window for another week, I returned to the study table to do a bit of work. By studying the body parts I had been saving, I could get a few more blue tech points under my belt. The Inquisitor and his entourage were taking their sweet old time today. Too bad it wasn't a race. But when he did eventually want to talk, I handed over the flyers and thus began another witch burning. Awkwardly enough, the burning wasn't a huge success, so the Inquisitor had a plan to let me use the eastern slope of Witch Hill to grow grapes, the same place where his wife and son died in the Great Blast. It's a whole thing. Which I can use to turn into wine for the guards to drink, because apparently the guards always find a witch when they're drunk. Oh, my moral compass is going wild right now. But I didn't have much choice. I heard profits and I'm all about profits. Jerry didn't seem too impressed either. And you know what? I don't blame him. I finished up my day building additions to the church and raising the quality a bit. Through the rain, I continued to work away in the yard. I was missing a church bench and it was killing me. That's better. Afterwards, I harvested another crop of carrots and of course replanted more seeds for another round. A few stayed in the chest for Donkey and the rest went into the oven to be made into cutlets. Another corpse was set alight and to bed I went. It was a beautiful day for a sermon on day 31, and what a damned good sermon it was. Since the bishop was here today, I gave him the 20 ceramic bowls he'd asked for. He mentioned upgrading the church to a big church if I could get my quality ratings to 30 in the graveyard and 20 in the church. With the talk of more faith and donations, it was safe to say I was keen as a bean. Afterwards, I put my tech points to use, unlocking the Gentle Butcher, Stone Gravestones, Price of Faith, and Master Gatherer technologies. And into the night I went around collecting stone to craft some stone fences for my graves. It's not a bad way to increase graveyard quality. As the sun rose, I added a few more stone fences to the graveyard. Already we were getting close to meeting the bishop's expectations, but it seems the lack of sleep and physical labor has caused me to become tired. Even in this world, I can't escape the consequences of not sleeping. So I had a quick nap. When I woke, I popped by the village to trade more certificates and cutlets with Heredric, and I got some hemp rope from Dig. I used it back at the church to make some candles and pop them up onto the candelabras. I'd actually never made them before, so I was quite proud of myself. For whatever reason, despite being the merchant's day, Snake was here too. Using some faith, I convinced him to cooperate and he gave me the key instructions. I was on my way to study the key when disaster struck. That's right, candles, as I should have guessed, are not eternal, and they do go out after a period of time. My disappointment is immeasurable. At least I still had enough faith to study the key, so I've got that going for me at least. After unlocking the power of faith technology, I replaced a candelabra in favour of a confessional booth. Then I unlocked the circular saw technology and got the workout extension upgrade. But I had an active key and needed to use it, so back to Snake I went. We opened the gate previously blocking the path to the church cellar and made our way through. Snake was yapping on about how he's gonna prove everyone wrong, yada yada yada. All I cared about was getting that diary for the astrologer. That was the key to getting me home. It was going great until I ran into a minor inconvenience. Lucky for me though, I'm immortal. I'm trying to decide whether that's a good or a bad thing. Snake, amazed at my ability to cheat death, or maybe not so amazed, wanted to use this for his own gains of course. He asked me to venture into the dungeon behind him to search for bloody nails and a bucket of blood. How gruesome. Nearby, I found the helper Jerry was on about a few days ago. Gunther, or Gunter, if you fancy like that, had some odd requests, mainly hitting him with a sword to make him feel something. However, Gunther introduced me to the weird and wonderful world of zombies, helpers who could assist me by covering monotonous tasks, leaving me to do the fun stuff, like graveyard keeping and witch burnings. I then recovered the Keeper's diary, questioned whatever the hell this thing is and what it was used for, and finished the day mining iron ore in the swamp, until my pickaxe broke on me. I called it a day after that. I'll be real, not a lot happened today, just a lot of work in the workyard trying to get the materials to make a circular saw, smelting iron in the furnace, and even more carrot cutlets. Watching the astrologer walk towards me in the pouring rain, it was almost too romantic, dancing in the downpour like a couple of goofballs. I know he'd never feel the same way, so I handed over the Keeper's diary and left it at that. It told us that to get home we'd need to craft a spirit laser made from a mirror of pride, an eternal burning coal, and a salty fork. As for the second half, well, we couldn't read it. I'd need to get the astrologer some acid and restoration tools to read that part. With another task added to my to-do list, I returned home to finally make that circular saw I've been wanting to make for a few days now. With it, I made wooden beams to use in making a wooden shrine for the church. Just ignore me removing the wrong candelabra here, and just the all-around stupidness. But eventually I did build that shrine. I told the boss man of my recent achievement, and the sermon, as usual, was a great success. With time still left in the day, I got to work in the graveyard sprucing up the more decrepit looking graves. That evening I hit bang on that 30 quality rating, and straight to the boss man I went. I'm glad to hear that he's no longer disgusted to be here. To celebrate, I finished the day staring into the steady flames of another cremation. I was ready to astound Miss Charm now that I had some faith to back me up. It seemed to work, so that's good. She even called Snake a sneaky bastard. And I would wholeheartedly agree with that statement. She wanted me to throw fake coins at him and report back to her. Well, I'm not gonna argue. She also told me that Snake might be able to get me a town pass to go and search for those rare items the astrologer had mentioned. I'd call that a successful conversation. A little while later, I found myself clearing out the rubble between my cellar and the church basement. This will definitely cut down on travel time between the two. Call me the carrot man, because I love planting carrots. To the north of home is a pile of rubble that I'm gonna have to move, because behind that pile of rubble lies what Gunther said to me would be my first zombie helper. I'm gonna name this one Gomez. Gomez and I became the best of friends. I decided to leave him in the morgue for now while I figure out what job to give him. The next morning, I paid Snake a visit to throw Miss Charm's fake coins at him. I told him we were in love, but he didn't buy it. No one ever does. I noticed that there's a lot Snake can offer me, but I guess I'll have to get those things he asked for first. But first things first, fishing. I spent a while here trying to catch breams since they're bronze quality, but I wasn't having much luck, so I tried the swamp, Still nothing. I had one other idea, and that was to use some sort of bait. I took some maggots back to the waterfall, and this actually worked. It upped my chances of catching bream to 100%. This is for the bishop, by the way. I don't know if I ever made that clear or not. I don't think I did, but now you do. And what's even better is the lighthouse keeper would buy some of my fish off me, and I'm not gonna deny some extra coin. The dungeon is where I ventured today. A scary place filled to the brim with monsters at every corner. 15 levels of pure, heart-racing, adrenaline-filled combat. And yet, for someone who just found out they're immortal, I played it remarkably safe. However, a full inventory and the juicy corpse bell pulled me out of the dungeon a little earlier than I expected. Call me Bugs, because I was bunny hopping for those carrots the morning of day 42. Good God, did I actually write that? Oh my god, I did. Anyway, not too much to report today, except for the fact that I traded some certificates at the Dead Horse, made some materials in the workyard that evening, and took off out to Clotho's home swamp home. You see, there's a bridge that you can build which shortcuts the whole maze, turning a labouring visit to Clotho into a very manageable one. The only trouble is, when I got there... Yeah, so I didn't bring any flinch. Let's just all be thankful that Poxiel's mic wasn't recording at the time. I would have gone back, but I had a sermon to run. The bishop got his quality fish fillets, and he told me that I'd need a building permit if I wanted to upgrade the church. Luckily, to buy citizenship status, it was only 10 bronze. However, the building permit itself cost a little bit more, and by a little bit, I mean a lot more. It was 20 silver. Fortunately, I had foreseen this coming from previous playthroughs, and I wasn't actually too far off having all the money. Alas, today's sermon was performed not in the big church, but hopefully next week it might be. You'll be happy to know I gave Clotho a health potion from the dungeon to bring her memory back. She taught me how to help the merchant, and I built the bridge over the swamp. Thrilled wasn't even close to describing how I felt. The following day I got stuck into trying to remember the fun world of alchemy. I had to unlock the Glassblower and Glassblower 2 technologies to even make a start on constructing one of the alchemy benches. I also paid a quick visit to Miss Charm to tell her of my coin throwing. She tasked me to bring back her necklace from Snake that she lost bartering to have a chance to sing in front of the king. I had no time to tell her how dumb that was because I needed to start smelting some conical flasks. Firstly, I unlocked the advanced smelting and built up a furnace too. Who knew it needed a sequel? I dug up some river sand nearby in the dead of night and mixed it with a bit of water. I was well on my way to smelting glass. While I waited, I worked away in the yard making materials to clear away another fallen archway in the church basement. Then a second one right after that, blocking the path to the morgue. Now I have ease of access between my cellar, the church basement, and the morgue. How convenient. By the time evening rolled around, the glass was finished and I was able to smelt it down into conical flasks. I had more time to pass while I waited, so to bed I went. Day 46 is an easy day to sum up. I cremated a corpse, I waited for conical flasks, I cremated another corpse. Next! Finally, I was able to swap out my normal conical flasks for the advanced kind of conical flasks. And while we were playing the waning game once again, I got to work studying more body parts at the study table for blue tick points. By the end of the day, I got to craft my first alchemy workbench. Burn the bodies. Burn them all! Oh, sorry about that. With the stone carving technology unlocked, I was eventually able to craft a stonecutter 2 station for the workyard. There's a joke I could make about a sequel here, but I don't think I want to say it. I should note that it may seem weird that there are multiple versions of the same station, like the furnace, stonecutter, carpenter's bench, amongst others. Basically, every time you get an upgrade for a station, it unlocks more things that you can craft when you're getting higher up in the tech trees. For instance, I needed polished bricks of stone for another station in the church basement, which wouldn't have been possible on a regular stonecutter. Anyway, as the sun set for the day, I unlocked the woodcutter tech, buried a body in the graveyard, and of course had to make it look nice, traded a couple more burial certificates at the tavern, and I got some sleep. As fate would have it, this week I had more than enough silver to purchase the building permit from the Royal Services box. And holy crap, that was quick. Pardon the language, but I said holy, so I think that makes it okay. The bishop turned around and told me to perform a sermon in my new church meant I'd need to be a rightful citizen. Slipped my mind my ass. Luckily for both his sake and mine, I had just enough silver left over to purchase the papers anyway. A big church is nice, but the bishop was thinking bigger and wanted to turn it into a cathedral one day, so that we could pray for the water to return to the Vima River in town. And to do so requires me to achieve a quality rating inside the church of 50 and 200 in the graveyard. They say Rome wasn't built in a day, and my god, neither will this cathedral, I'm afraid. Also, with the polished stone, I managed to craft myself an alchemy mill. Heredric was happy to hear the news of the new church upgrade. At least someone's excited for me. I realized soon after that I had very much neglected to give Gomez, our zombie helper, a job. So just north of where I found him is where I built up a zombie sawmill, a great place for Gomez to chop wood for me. I think he's gonna be happy here. This girl is on fire. This girl is on fire. I couldn't put off Snake's weird requests any longer, so back to the dungeon I went. I was a brave boy and faced the scary monsters all by myself. Level 1 turned into level 2, more monsters faced the wrath of my sword, and level 2 turned into level 3. I gotta say, not a bad effort for a day's work. The morning began with me on a tech point spending spree, unlocking the inborn blacksmith tech, embalming liquids tech, embalming tech, illumination of faith tech, and the graveyard enhancement tech. Not to mention I made a lawn in the graveyard. Why? I don't know, probably just to see what it looked like, I guess. With carrots coming out my ears, seeds being picked up in the dungeon, and maggots and peat constantly coming in from my compost heaps, my garden trunk was feeling the pressure, so I made another one to help alleviate that. I spent all day gathering materials to make a church workbench, only to realize that I already had one. God, my stupidity just surprises me sometimes, eh? Thanks to all of my cremations over the last few days, I had about 4 certificates to trade with Heredric. Afterwards, it was time for one of my world famous sermons. With a bigger church, I am happy to say that I get more faith and donations, which I can use to study more things, which will give me more blue tick points, because those things are a hot commodity right now. Before returning to my favourite place of all time, the dungeons. I unlocked the weapons tech and crafted myself a brand new sword and iron armour at the carpenter's workbench. My run lasted all but 1 minute. I did return after emptying my inventory. I just wanted enough space to collect everything while I was down here. It took some time, but eventually I slayed all the monsters on level 3 and proceeded down a level. I called it there, however, being battered and bruised, I thought I should rest to recuperate. But that didn't keep me away for long because I was right back to it. These Iron Maidens are easy enough to dodge, but more importantly, they drop bloody nails. So I went room to room, removing the monsters from within, and eventually got close to the end of the level. But I made a hasty retreat while being chased by 2 Iron Maidens.
Why are you running? Why are you running?
It just so happened to be Snake's visiting day too, so on the way past I handed over some of the bloody nails I'd collected. I spent some time roaming around home, dispersing all that I'd found down below, all before returning again to keep the adventure going. And just as the days rolled over, I made it all the way down to level 5. I repeated the same process of emptying my full inventory around home, and back I went for round 3. It took a while to work my way through each room, but eventually I found my way to the end, and waiting there for me, in the chest in the middle of the room, was a big old bucket of blood. Snake will be stoked. In preparation of taking my graveyard to the next level, I unlocked the carved gravestones tech. Before starting off day 61 with a wonderful sermon, up at the sawmill, Gomez had done such a good job chopping wood that I switched him out to the porter station so he could run it all home for me. Eventually I'll have 2 zombies here so Gomez won't have to switch jobs, but for now this is as good as it's gonna get. I continued northward bound, across the river, eventually making it to the quarry. The quarry is a great place to gather ores from the many deposits around, such as iron, stone, marble, and coal. Not only that, but when I get my hands on more zombie helpers, I can set them up to bring me all of these materials themselves. As long as the zombies don't have the capability to unionize, then hey, it's a pretty solid plan. For now though, I crafted up a stone cutter at the quarry and an iron ore stockpile. I may not have any zombies yet, but that won't stop me from getting my hands on some iron ore the old-fashioned way. Speaking of zombies, back in the morgue, I unlocked the second chance tech and built up a resurrection table. This is where, when combining a corpse with some zombie juice and a little bit of faith, I can make my very own Gomez lookalikes. I then got jumped by a bunch of bats as they spawned in, not important, but it scared me. I dabbled in a bit of alchemy today, and while you watch me fail at it for a bit, let me explain how this stuff works. Alchemy in this game can come across as pretty tricky, but once you get it, then it's not so bad. So first of all, you have the study table. This lets you study basically everything, and you'll see that some items can decompose and others can't. The items that can decompose either decompose into powders, solutions, or extracts. To make a powder, you use the alchemy mill. For a solution, you use the hand mixer, and for an extract, you use the distillation cube. You with me so far? So then you combine these powders, solutions, and extracts with each other in the alchemy workbenches to make potions, paints, elixirs, and all sorts. Just make sure to keep the wiki handy to know what powders, solutions, and extracts go together to make what you need. Trust me, it saved me hours. And honestly, that's about it. Now you too can go out there and become a master alchemist. As for my day, well, I planted carrots and cremated another body. Snake was back the following morning, and it was the perfect opportunity to hand over that bucket of blood. With everything in place, my eyes laid witness to Snake's crazy incantations.
Magic.
Well now, isn't that fun? Not impressed, Snake ordered me to get in contact with the astrologer about finding the Necronomicon, so that he could copy the ritual word for word. I ventured out west to Clotho and ended up buying a vial of acid from her so that I could give it to the astrologer. I then cremated yet another corpse. Well into the next day, I had managed to craft a hand mixer in the church basement. Turns out after studying carrots and running them through a hand mixer, it gives you health solution. Combine that with salt and you'll get yourself some spices. A perfect solution to the merchant's dud buds. Running to the lighthouse had a real moody feel to it today. I was only here to drop off that acid to the astrologer. Shortly after, I found myself back in the Dead Horse handing over the pen and paper Wagner had asked for. I'll admit, quite a while ago. He didn't seem to mind, however, even with the pen and paper, he needed some encouragement. I bought some silver quality wine from Heradric and he gave me a silver quality story back. I'm glad I realized that he'd just keep trading the wine for stories, otherwise I would have hit the bottom of my savings pretty quickly. After I had performed my weekly sermon over the church, just outside I buried another body. Cremation is great, but it's not going to help me get to that 200 graveyard quality rating that I need. Over in the garden, I decided to revamp my compost heaps. I figured a bunch of them to the side would work best since I'll be expanding the garden soon. Actually, I used maggots to turn into a solution, which I then used in the alchemy table to create a growth enhancer. I was planning to use it for fertilizer, but do you think I had enough tech points to unlock it? To those of you who thought no, you're correct. I did not have enough. But after making and studying a stone grey fence later on, I did have enough to unlock the simple fertilizer tech. I was interrupted on my way out of the church soon after by our ghostly friend Yorick. He told me he'd recently been appointed superintendent of the graveyard. He didn't have much else to say, but I appreciated him letting me know. Pairing the growth enhancer with Pete at the church workbench let me make my first of what will be many lots of fertilizer. Before I could use it, however, I put my shovel to work out in the garden preparing a field for crops. And over in the village, I handed over the spices that I had made for the merchant. He was so overwhelmed with tastes that he then asked me to make 5 gold star dinners to impress some royal council members. After all of that, I returned home to put some of that fertilizer I'd made to growing even more carrots. Snake was back today and I didn't hold back asking him about the whereabouts of Miss Charm's necklace. Surprisingly, he didn't mind telling me. Long story short, it actually wasn't in the town. The Lord Commander from the mountain fort purchased it, but I could get my hands on it through a friendship with the Lord's hunchbacked servant, Kukul. On my way out, I took the restoration tools while I was at it. To pass the time, I built another shrine for the church and buried another body in the graveyard. Church interior decorating continued to day 71. I removed the bottom shrine so I could place it up here opposite the other one, and in its place I built a second confessional booth. Those restoration tools I had got a couple of days ago had to go to someone, and that lucky someone was the astrologer. Of course, he asked for it. He managed to separate the pages to reveal the components to craft the rest of the spirit laser, a necklace with a sapphire, a golden angle, and an endless notebook. But in a plot twist that no one saw coming, more text in the diary revealed that the astrologer may have a daughter. He agreed to help me find the necklace and golden angle if I could help him first, and asked me to go and chat with the Baron near the mountain fort. I also asked about the Necronomicon on behalf of Snake. The astrologer said he gave it to the lighthouse keeper because he liked the pictures. Naturally, the lighthouse keeper wanted to trade for it, 5 maggots for probably one of the most magic-filled books this world has ever seen. Hey, sounds like a fair trade to me. With the Necronomicon now in my possession, I returned to decorate the church some more. Faith and donations were on the rise with a higher quality rating at the church, and I'm not complaining whatsoever. I filled my time with a bit of gardening today, and also replacing the old candelabras with the newer models. On the side of Witch Hill is where I made small steps towards starting a wine empire. I got the first 4 vine trellises ready for grape seeds and found a sign on the church grounds, saying that I could expand the graveyard if I go and talk to the Inquisitor. Bear in mind, Miss Charm's day and the Inquisitor's days look very alike. I'll tell you one thing, I was going to be very disappointed when I got to Witch Hill. I was, but instead I found some guards doing what they do best, guarding a so-called ambush. I'd somehow have to find a way to get rid of them if I wanted to do anything with the pedestal. Call me Victor Frankenstein though, because I brought my first corpse to life. I'm not going to name him, but he can keep Gomez company by working the porter station. The next day I carried on ticking off small steps towards my wine empire. The merchant sold me some silver quality grape seeds, and with the fertilizer not only will it give me more grapes, but gold quality seeds back. Not a lot, but enough to save up and grow all in good time. I unlocked the winemaking technology and built a winemaking barrel right under my house. Speaking of right under my house, Snake was visiting today, so I handed over the Necronomicon to him. And we got our first achievement of the video, people! Woo! Apparently the summoning ritual was a lot more complicated than we thought, so I offered a helping hand to get this place horrible and hellish for the summoning of a lifetime. I then asked about having the endless notebook for the spirit laser. Unfortunately, Snake has a real tragic backstory about holding it as he escaped a burning house as a child. I'll have to ask for it later if the ritual goes well, maybe. And I finished the day building a vine press next to my winemaking barrel in the cellar. Jerry has been waiting on this wine for a while now, but finally he did get some. In return, I got some useless information that I already knew. Certainly not worth the silver I paid Heradric for that. For some reason, and I have no idea how I got it, I did have a town pass in my inventory. So I tried to use it south of the village to get into town. And let me just say that that also did not go well. Jerry suggested instead of trying to get to town to find the magical items, I should just talk to Snake. Jerry said he hides in a pile of skulls and talks to him as his inner voice, and I have to say I found that both equally unethical and hilarious. I paid a visit to the Baron shortly after being struck down by Zeus to ask about Esmeralda. He would tell me, but on the condition that I could get the Inquisitor to release one of his friends. Unfortunately, I'm not that close to the Inquisitor as I had hoped, so that questline came to a halt pretty quickly. On the other hand, he did give me permission to use the other half of the graveyard, which gives me loads more room to work with. I went on a manic hunt for Kukul a day later. I was told he'd appear at night, and no matter how hard I searched, or for how long, he just wasn't anywhere to be seen. I'm expanding my zombies beyond the fun world of chopping trees. The quarry needs some workers. So I unlocked the zombie stone mine tech, installed one spot for a zombie to mine stone, and set up a porter station for another zombie to transport the goods. While I waited for the perfect juicy corpse to become my next Gomez clone, I worked on producing more fertilizer for the garden crops and grapes. I'd run through my first batch and I needed more. As night came, a perfect opportunity to create my second zombie arose, and under the moonlight, well, okay, just imagine, because we're in the morgue. I brought another helper to life! Up at the quarry, I put my new worker to work mining stone. And while I was at it, I built a stone stockpile so the stone would have somewhere to be stored. Back on the side of Witch Hill, my grapes were ready for harvest. I'm so glad I had the fertilizer because I was getting gold quality grapes and seeds on top of the normal harvest. It's not much, but it's a good start, that's for sure. Clotho emerged from her hut a little while later, probably wondering what the hell the graveyard keeper was creepily waiting outside her hut for. I was here simply to purchase some apple tree saplings. There's a spot beside the garden to grow apples and berries, so I thought, why not? I got nothing better to do. That's a lie actually, because overnight I resurrected another corpse and gave him the important task of transporting goods. I kept an eye on him just to make sure he wasn't going to pull a fast one on me. Satisfied he wasn't up to any funny business, I went home and unlocked the bee domestication tech, but then got distracted cremating another body to do anything else. I popped by the beekeeper the following day to purchase some bees, and I made my first bee house. Also, I added another body to the graveyard. This week's faith obtained from the weekly sermon was used to study more gravestones and fences for blue tech points. They go as quickly as you get them, I swear. I then spent some time unlocking the ceramic firing tech, so I could smelt bowls into ceramic jugs in the furnace, and staring into the warm embrace of my fiery furnace. I basically spent all day running around trying to get all the materials necessary to build a stone columbarium for the graveyard. That was convincing. Not to mention a quick grape harvest in the middle. In the dead of night, I finally got to build it up and my efforts paid off. Because the stone columbarium adds 12 points to the quality rating. Yeah, I got it. I might have to make another one of these things. Down in the cellar, I made my first pail of grape juice. You need 2 in order to make wine in the wine barrel, so I will keep harvesting and expanding my grape growing as time moves on. Jerry, and I hate to say it, was right about Snake. It seems he does know about the magical items. However, he's reluctant to tell me until I help him first. As a wise woman once said, sneaky bastard. Over the last few days, I had been hoarding skulls from corpses, so I chucked up a wall of skulls to get a head start on that ritual. It's almost like staring at art, just a lot more haunting. After a bit of fishing along the riverside, I carved them into fillets, and the next day I dropped them off for the Baron. In return, I learned how to cook kebabs. Frankly, all I did on day 90 was build 2 more bee houses. Day 91 wasn't anything special either. I got rid of my old furnace, performed a sermon, then got rid of my other furnace thinking I could line them up on the edge of the workyard. You cannot do that. Maybe it was a blessing in disguise, because I like the new spots way better anyway. What's better than 1 zombie mining in a stone quarry? 2 zombies mining in a stone quarry. Look at them go. Proud of you 2. Might get employee of the month if you keep this up. Today consisted of a grape harvest, running around like a headless chicken, and another wall of skulls. As the days swapped over, I unlocked a couple of writing technologies, including a zombie random text generator, as well as the precious metals tech. I used the tech to smelt graphite, which I then studied and turned into a fine powder combined with water gives you black paint. Carrying on, I used the black paint with water and conical flasks to make ink. Then after a quick trip to the village to get feathers, I made a bunch of pen and inks. I'm not too sure why I was so obsessed with making these random text generators, but I was, and I did make one. It seems you can get zombies to write either stories or tick point books. Very cool. In the early morning, I added a grave while singing my new favorite theme tune, My Grave Brings All the Boys to the Yard. By the way, I added 3 more random text generators. Because why not, I guess? It just so happened that while I was collecting food from the oven today, it gave me an achievement for collecting 1,000 green tick points. And like I said, I enjoyed the first stone columbarium so much that I just couldn't stop myself from building another one. And now we're over halfway to 200. With the knowledge that candles do in fact run out, I made sure for today's sermon to light those candles before it started. I think it gave me like 1 extra faith though, so I will be suing the bishop. In better news, I got to assign a new zombie to one of my random text generators. This may take a while. So in the meantime, I found the bishop outside taking in the marvel that is my graveyard. He wanted me to make statues of him, one for his office, one for the soup kitchen, and of course, one for the graveyard. I had a look at the tech tree and quickly found out that this task may take a while, but I did unlock the books tech and writer's inspiration tech. For the church basement, I built up an alchemy rack to store the alchemy stuff away from the other stuff. The next day began dealing with another grape harvest, before using the grapes I had been storing to turn into pails of grape juice. Then in the wine barrel I could combine 2 pails to make wine. It does need time to ferment, so I passed the time planting cabbage. Not too sure why I went with so much cabbage in the end, but hey, I'm having fun, and that's what matters. The wine was brewed and sitting in my inventory now, just gotta wait for the Inquisitor to visit in a couple of days. It was obvious that I needed more blue tick points. I kept making gravestones and fences to see what I had studied, but at least I could make use of the west side of the graveyard. I guess I gotta spread it out for Yorick's sake. As we round on to a big milestone, day 100, I unlocked the softness of faith tech. If I wanted to increase the church rating, I'd have to provide for the tushies of my congregation and make comfier benches. There wasn't much time for celebration though, I was still out here grinding away. Over in the village, I was sad to see the beekeeper didn't want to buy my honey. I know you harvest your own, but mine's better. Haradric took half of my wine however, and that more than made up for the stingy beekeeper. Look at that sweet, sweet coin. I then unlocked the zombie vineyard tech back home, but I won't be using that for a while, so it's all good. Would you believe it, but I finally found Kukul. This slippery bastard was hiding in the woods. I asked about the necklace, and to be honest, he didn't even know. He suggested the Lord Commander's son may have it, who left a couple of years ago. That sounds super promising. Later in the day, I met up with the Inquisitor and finally handed over the wine. I asked how business was going, and to cut the yapping to a minimum, it wasn't good. So he proposed snacks and drinks. Quite literally, a tent with beers and burgers. The tent seemed easy enough to construct, and with the materials gathered, I built our witch-burning, get-your-hot-dogs type of tent. The Inquisitor seemed quite impressed. He even said I'd be a good fit for their future world. I won't lie, that scared me a little bit. With some trust behind me, the Inquisitor agreed to release the Baron's friend from capture, and also to remove the patrolling guards from atop the hill, for which I got another achievement. I paid a visit to the Baron to tell him of the good news. He told me Esmeralda, the astrologer's late wife, was laid to rest on a ship of the dead many years ago. Her daughter, however, is still alive and well, someone who betrayed the memory of her mother by selling her mother's last gift, for a chance to sing in front of the king. By Jove, it's Miss Charm! Truly shocking stuff. And to finish off a crazy day, I popped the apprentice achievement for making 5 alchemy recipes. I laid it on thick the next day for the astrologer. You have a daughter, and it's Miss Charm. He was pretty sad about leaving Esmeralda, so I agreed to have a chat with Miss Charm, just to see if there was any hope left for the astrologer to make amends. I also made more fertilizer because I was running low again. After a morning grape harvest, I had received enough seeds back to warrant a small expansion of the trellises. Speaking of upgrades, I added a skull column to Snake's summoning zone. Those things take a lot of skulls, man. I still need at least 5 more for another column. But alas, they will come in due time. For now, I unlocked the advanced alchemy tech and built up a distillation cube. I'm taking my alchemy to the next level. Soon after, I popped by the dead horse to speak with Miss Charm about the necklace. I confidently told her that I could find it and prayed to the mysterious man in the void that I'd be able to hold up that end of the bargain. She then asked me to get some of Miss Chain's perfume from her. Sounds easy enough, I'll just talk to Chain about it. Okay, so I need to give a basket of food to her sister Clotho and catch a dozen frogs. Well, I marched all the way to Clotho where I handed over the basket of food. I noticed that she sells frogs, don't tell Chain, but I bought 10. Nearby in the swamp, I cast out my rod with butterflies as bait, unlocked the fish a day achievement for catching 6 different types of fish, and walked out of there with all the frogs I needed. Why I didn't go back and hand over the frogs is quite literally killing me. Like, stop picking flowers, Pox. Go back and give Chain the damn frogs. So I did eventually get back to her, but of course Miss Charm was now gone, and I'd have to wait another week to hand over the perfume. To make up for the frog incident, I paid a visit to the merchant to purchase some silk, unlocked the assembly stand tech so that I could build up a carpenter's workbench too, on which I made a bunch of jointings. That I then used in the church to swap out 3 rock hard benches for the comfy alternative. Day 107 was pretty much spent in the workyard getting everything ready to finish what I started with the benches now that we had comfy seats all around. A job well done, and the bishop will be happy to hear my church quality surpassed 50. I finished off the day harvesting grapes, and started the next one expanding and planting even more. What followed was wine making in the cellar and in addition to the graveyard. When I let the boss man know of my efforts in the church, he simply swooned over my work. A cathedral upgrade was now in sight. All I had to do was make those statues of him and he'd make it happen. Back again in the cellar, I built myself a brewing stand after unlocking the technology. You never know when you're gonna need to brew a fresh mug of beer. And right next to it is where the fermentation barrel went. Again, more for just in case than anything. A week had rolled by since missing Miss Charm, I'll take the blame for that. So when I handed over the perfume to her and got the achievement for doing so, I felt a strong sense of relief. She continued to purpose my goodwill by asking me to get her a gold quality story to use for a concert. Not too hard, I just got one from home and brought it back to her. I spoke way too soon because I needed to talk to the farmer about letting his daughter Alyssa accompany her to the concert. And if we all know that farmer well, then that's not likely. I also asked about her father. She went on about how she's cursed to be alone. Apparently the necklace was meant to bring her love, but of course she sold it.
You stupid.
and then proceeded to dig into her father. Yeesh, that's not looking good. Like I predicted, the farmer wasn't letting Alyssa go anytime soon either, but the farmer's son told me to go and speak to his uncle about fixing the mill, then maybe he'd let her go. So I did. I got the instructions to fix it, but go figure, the last page was missing. Looks like I'll have to talk to the astrologer. Back home, I got really confused as to where my tech books went. I thought I'd mucked the random text generator up completely. You'll see that it didn't go into the scroll shelf and you'll find it funny. See? There they are, just sitting in the alchemy rack. I haven't seen them yet, so don't tell me. At this point, I also decided to switch out the carrot cutlets for sauerkraut for some reason. I think it's because it gives me more energy. It also makes all the buffs last longer, that's what that is. But anyway, I thought you should know. The Royal Services box was leaving me royally poor today. After weeks of selling burial certificates and selling off goods, I had saved up 50 silver to finally purchase the trade license, which I took all the way over to the merchant, unlocking the achievement Graveyard Veggies. Now that the merchant and I were in business, this barn was to become our trade hub, so to speak. Basically, we can sell crates of goods every week for profits, and my first goals were to hike up the marketing and sell my first 7 crates. He did also suggest getting Miss Charm in on the marketing campaign somehow to boost sales, so I'll keep that in mind. I made some flyers shortly after and returned to the barn to get some fame. With that fame, I can build more pallets, so that's good to know. I finally found the tech books tucked away in the alchemy rack. See, I'm learning. Later on, I made another pallet in the barn and made the connection that to build more, I'd need to write up flyers for more fame. So naturally, I returned with more and got us to 3 fame, but then got distracted resurrecting a corpse. My tick book guy needed a friend, before I made the 3rd pallet in the merchant's trade hub. I'll be honest, day 113 was just filled with odd jobs here and there. My graveyard was coming along quite nicely though. I had a quality of 128, slowly but surely pushing it to that 200 mark. It's never easy giving bad news, it's no different when it's a stroppy astrologer either. I told him of his daughter's response, but I said I'd keep him in the loop if any chance of redemption came up. He also gave me calculations for the broken mill, which I can take back to the miller. Lastly, I asked about those magical items. He explained to me that the necklace might be with Miss Charm. I know I'm still on a wild goose chase for that. And the golden angle is probably somewhere up in the mountain fort somewhere. A short while later, I put the calculations to use rebuilding the mill and got an achievement for doing so. Just south of the mill, the farmer heard of the mill being rebuilt and had changed his tune, and good news! He gave permission for Alyssa to go to the concert. Most of the next day was taken up giving sermons, harvesting and replanting grapes, and brewing more wine. With Miss Charm back again, I was happy to let her know Alyssa would be able to join her for the concert. Only problem is that she tried to correct her age. I should say forge her age. And it looked pretty sloppy, but if I had aristocratic papers, I'd be able to sign it off with no problems. I went to the Royal Services box to check how much it would cost to become an aristocrat. Oh my god! Let's just hope that this partnership with the merchant goes well. To make a start on that, I built the crate factory in my workyard. As you can see, we can box up a whole bunch of things that we can sell off each week. My thinking was if I continued down the dungeon, I'd find seeds here and there. Unfortunately, you can't ship away carrots and cabbages. They have to be quality crops like pumpkins, onions and lentils, which is annoying, but it makes sense. I gave up the dungeon for a bit though. Instead, I made 2 blood fountains for Snake. Horrifying, but yet somehow kinda cool. Maybe I'm just too far deep in this game. It was a big day at the quarry the next day. My mining zombies were working hard and clogging up the stone stockpile faster than the porter station zombie could move them. So I added 2 more porter stations alongside 2 spots for future zombie helpers to mine marble for me. On top of that, I built 2 more spots for future zombie expeditions into the unreachable ore mine, and finally a 2nd stone stockpile. Luckily, I had 2 bodies to reincarnate in the morgue already. One I plopped on the porter station and the other I set up to mine marble for me. I then decided to build another stone stockpile for the workyard too, just for extra storage. It's been a number of weeks since I started my winemaking journey, and to see how far it's come brings a tear to my eye. I fixed up the corpse chute today, that way when Donkey drops off a body it'll slide right into the morgue for me. Then it was back to the dungeon to search for more seeds. Only problem is, the further down I go, the more mutated and weirder the monsters get. Now there's fire bats and spiders flinging webs at me. It sorta paid off in the form of planting down some bronze quality onions. At least that's a start. A while later, I constructed a third stone stockpile for the workyard and put a fresh zombie to work mining marble up at the quarry. After another of my world famous sermons this morning, I was running through the cellar where I picked up some finished wine. And being gold quality, I got the winemaker achievement. However, I found out at the Dead Horse that I cannot sell gold quality wine to Heredric, only silver or lower. Although maybe the merchant may take my quality booze? I'll check in a couple of days. Honestly, there was an egregious amount of faffing around on day 128. I was mainly just trying to figure out how to make these gold quality statues for the bishop. I was right about the wine though, the merchant did in fact buy gold quality wine, and I got my first gold piece. Woohoo! Only 11 more to go, which is 1,100 silver. Yay! Soon after that, I put down a brand new upgraded anvil in the workyard and unlocked the rules of burning tech. Getting the fireman perk from this tech is great, but please do not under any circumstances get it for the lanterns. I didn't end up building a single one. Who knows, they may bring you magical powers, but for me, total waste of tech points. Don't know why I bought it, shouldn't have bought it. Not to worry, because I've quickly moved on. A grape harvest awaited me today, so that's what took up most of the day. Once again, I returned to the dungeon in search of seeds. My priority was pumpkin seeds, because I not only need them to make crates, but I also need them to finish up Snake's sacrificial space. Not to mention, there's now electrical charged fairies trying to blow me up, so that's really fun. Regardless, the trouble wasn't the monsters down here, it was just the lack of seeds. Seriously, every time I smashed some vases, I prayed they'd drop seeds, but they hardly ever did. I think I needed a day to do odd jobs and recuperate, so that's what day 133 was. That didn't stop me going back though, Stubborn is my middle name after all. This electrical powder got a bit clingy, yet refused to join the others in my backpack. And what on God's green earth is that thing? I think I'd much rather be up here planting some silver quality lentils than down there with that thing. I made some extra coin trading with Heredric the next day, and then, yep, back to the dungeon I went. I'll tell you one thing, I wasn't hanging on by much when I left a little while later. I thought I'd go pay the farmer a visit to see on the off chance that he might sell quality seeds. Because, you know, that makes sense, being the farmer and all. Oh my God. You have got to be joking me. What was I thinking going down in the dungeon? I spent days upon days scavenging around for them and the farmer had them the whole time. Why didn't anyone tell me? I must look like an idiot right now. After a day of crafting and making more fertilizer for my new seeds, in the early hours of the morning I planted down my new crops in the garden and I moved the carrots and cabbages down a section to make room for the pumpkins and onions. If it's okay with you, I'd actually like to swiftly move on. All I did on day 138 was build another trunk for the garden area and grow more lentils. In the middle of the night, I paid Clotho a visit where I dropped off a silver quality pumpkin for her, and in return I learned how to cook various soups. Shortly after, I set up a fresh zombie to go work in the ore mines, and a while later I dealt with another grape harvest on the side of Witch Hill. Look at my glorious pumpkins! Ignore the carrots, I misclicked twice if you'd believe it. For picking a gold star pumpkin, I got the golden pumpkin achievement. And I was now well on my way to financial freedom. To finish up the night, I zapped another corpse to life and put him in charge of the third porter station at the quarry. Now that I had skulls, pumpkins, and the materials all prepared, I thought it was the perfect time to finish Snake's decorations. With a touch of scary flair here and scary flair there, it was done. The sacrifice zone quality was bang on 20. I love what I've done with the place. Snake was undoubtedly impressed also. I got the achievement, simple yet stylish, and I couldn't agree more. Obviously, there's more to it. I need to get him a damask sword to perform the sacrifice. Afterwards, I asked Snake about the magical items I was after. The Mirror of Pride, he said, was carried around by the bishop. The Eternal Burning Coal is held by the Inquisitor himself, and the Salty Fork, well, the merchant has that. Moving on with that knowledge, as I was burying a body in the graveyard that night, Yorick arose in front of the church. He had a go at me for ruining his superintendent position by burying corpse with red skulls. It was a bold-faced lie to say I was trying. I hadn't even begun to look into embalming, because that's for later on. His lightning and anger did slightly lower my rating. Oh well, day 143 is a new day. A new day to harvest produce wonderful crops and replant them in the garden. A new day to run romantically up Witch Hill to go and talk to the Inquisitor, only for him to leave just as you get there, making you wait another week to talk to him. That little tease. The following day was mostly taken up removing and building an upgraded furnace, a Furnace 3. It's a trilogy! And the tech book duo turned into a tech book trio at the random text generators. I love it though, free tech points are nothing to complain about. I made my first zombie vineyard and realized that to grow gold quality grapes, I'd have to make gold quality fertilizer. Yeah, I should have seen that one coming. So I unlocked the complex fertilizers tech, then got to work distilling some maggots in the distillery cube for life extract, and picking red mushrooms over in the swamp to turn into toxic solutions at the hand mixer. But in order to make gold quality fertilizer, I first needed an upgraded alchemy workbench. No fault of my own though, I replaced the first one because I thought it wouldn't matter. And it most certainly does. The first bench combines 2 things, whereas the upgraded bench combines 3 things. Warm furnace. I got my normal bench back, and I'm very sorry for destroying you in the first place. Now for the moment of truth. When you combine ash with toxic solution and life extract, then you'll get flavor enhancer. While I waited to make more, I built up an upgraded distillation cube too right next to the other one, just to speed the process up a bit. Finally, when you combine the flavor enhancer with peat, you then get gold quality fertilizer. So now my zombie vineyard can produce gold quality grapes, which I will start as soon as I have a zombie to spare. You may notice that today is in fact day 154. Considering it was day 150 a second ago, you may be wondering where the other days went. Well, they actually don't exist. I actually forgot to unpause the recording when I got back from lunch. I know, professional YouTuber, should have known better. What you missed over those few days was me getting the more red points achievement, sending off my first 3 crates full of vegetables for the merchant, and me just working on my zombie vineyard. So nothing too major, I promise. That being said, let's carry on, shall we? I continued to work on the side of Witch Hill, removing all the vine trellises and building a bunch of zombie vineyards in place of them. I'll be slowly adding zombies to their workstations over the next while. Having blown all of my fertilizer on setting up the vineyards, I had to take some time to make more of both, which is just inconvenient, you know? But I added the fertilizer, added the seeds to them all a while later, and all the vineyard workstations were now rearing to go. Over in the trade hub barn, I checked out what kind of money I had made from those 3 crates. 32 silver was actually really good. If I could somehow automate the process with zombies, then I'd be away laughing. You can never have enough fertilizer, so I made some more. That I could use out in the garden harvesting a bunch of veggies. That means you can finally watch me make some crates. And I didn't accidentally pause the recording this time. Woohoo! So when you make the crates, they end up here in the cellar, and I can run them to the barn from the tunnels, where they will be sold at the end of the merchant's day. But like I said, if I can automate this process with zombies, then I'd be making money every week without having to lift a finger. On the contrary, I traded some wine with both the merchant and Herandric, all of which I did have to lift a finger to make. One day it would all be different. Actually, that day is today. By making a zombie winery down in the cellar, I can assign a zombie to take the grapes brought down by the porter zombie that were harvested by the vineyard zombies to make wine for me, all automated by my helpers. The final piece of the puzzle was a trunk in the vineyard, and there we go. Wine will now be made without me even having to think about it. How bloody good. A couple of days later, I dived headfirst into making a combo prayer. Now, for those who have seen the original 100 days video I did, you'll know how hard it was for me to work out how to get one. But this time was different. I had more knowledge behind me. In the process of writing pages and turning them into chapters, I happened to unlock the achievement for collecting 1000 blue points. I combined a book cover I had bought from the astrologer and the chapter I had just made to make a book. Combine that with some faith and you have yourself a bronze quality combo prayer. I'll probably go for a gold one soon, but for now that should get me some extra faith and money bonuses every time I perform my weekly sermon. I found Kukul that evening because I heard he sold a damask sword. He did, for an extravagant price. But I did have the money now, and I'm confident that I'll be racking in the gold soon enough with my crates. So I bought the sword. I've always sworn by combo prayers in this game, and I think I will continue to swear by them. They're just so good. I managed to haul another load of crates to the trade hub on day 164. Perfect timing before the merchant sells them off tomorrow. I then turned my attention to those dinners the merchant had asked for. I don't know, like 100 days ago or something. Now that I had gold quality veggies growing, I thought it would be pretty doable. In between figuring that out, I got to hand over the Damask sword to Snake. Surrounded by a few loyal followers, fountains of blood flowing around us, Snake took the sword and bloody stabbed me with it. Sneaky bastard, killing the immortal guy, eh? I have feelings, you know. So I took myself back to the kitchen and continued to work on these dinners. Between making delicious foods, I started trying to make these quality chisels. If I could get them to gold quality, then I'd have a chance of carving the gold quality statues for the bishop, which included turning silver quality chisels into gold ones, and that's not a 100% chance by the way, unless you have the right perks, which I did not have. I was getting close to having those dinners though. I found Snake hovering over my bed as I awoke the next morning. Apparently a vampire hunter was on the way to kill Snake and burn down the church. The solution? Wait a really long time and then crush him with a massive boulder on the way past. I felt a little bad for getting this achievement, mainly for that poor horse. But in cheerier news, I built my first zombie farm for my onions. That might make me feel a little better about crushing a horse to death. I managed to finally make those 3 gold quality marble statues later on, and I'll be honest, the similarities are uncanny. Looking good, boss. 2 days later is when I got the dream dinner achievement. I had made onion rings, vegetable soup, and cake, all gold quality, to turn into 5 gold quality dinners. Over in the village, I paid a visit to the merchant. I let him know I had sold more than 7 crates for the business and handed over the 5 gold quality dinners. He said he'd report back in a week to see what the council members said. The only thing standing in his way was the head of the royal council not being in the gourmets club. But if we could get Miss Charm on board, then he might be persuaded, if you know what I mean. A discovery the following day led me to fixing the graveyard fence. Great news for me because it upped my quality by a lot. I did it once more to build a stone fence. I got the achievement stone fence for doing so, and we were 1 measly point away from 200. At the end of the day, I got the chance to bury another corpse in the graveyard, cruising us over the 200 mark. Another round of vegetable filled crates were made and transported to the barn today. You can tell I'm about to try my luck making a gold combo prayer because I'm figuring out how to make book covers and unlocking the playwright tech, so I have a better chance of getting gold quality stories, chapters and books. Before I can do that, however, the bishop needed to hear of my accomplishments with the graveyard. In the blink of an eye, the big church became a cathedral, and I got the His Mansion achievement. The bishop gave me the final task of finding someone important who's close to the royal council to attend our big Bring Back the Water sermon. Plus I need some aristocrat papers, which I am working on. Sermons in the new cathedral feel great, by the way. One of the last workstations to add to the workyard is a jewellery table, and considering I didn't need my first carpenter's workbench anymore, I swapped it in favour of the jewellery table. I smelted gold overnight and used it to make gold jewellery details, and used them to install a stained window in the new cathedral. Shortly after, I paid a visit to Miss Charm and the Dead Horse to ask her to promote graveyard veggies in the town. I don't blame her for thinking the name's a little bit dumb, but if I made some jewellery for her, then she'd agree to promote our graveyard veggies. I also had a nice chat with Jerry in the morgue afterwards. He's a bit of a prick, but the talking skull's growing on me, I think. It's been a few days, trust me, you didn't miss much, but by day 179, I had my first zombie farm running. Today I plucked up the courage to ask the Inquisitor to our Bring Back the Water sermon. Unfortunately, he didn't seem too interested. A second zombie farm was erected a day later. This one would be for pumpkins. I better not hear any complaints from you, mister, or you better hope you can swim. Anyway, enjoy! Later on the following day, I studied some gravestones for blue tech points, unlocked the gems technology, and headed down into the dungeon. Because on one of these levels that I've already cleared, I remembered lies a chunk of faceted diamonds. On top of that, I paid a visit back to the merchant where I sold him 6 stacks of wine, and I asked him how dinner went. He said it went well and we have some support, but I think we still need Miss Charm to get us all the way. For some people, in more ways than one. Am I right? Back home, I used the faceted diamonds to make the jewellery fit for a classy gal like Miss Charm. After a week of a whole lot of nothing, I finally made that gold quality combo prayer I had talked about on day 188. Let the faith and donations roll on in! On top of that, I handed over the jewellery I had made to Miss Charm and got the on every shelf achievement. She seemed satisfied with my work and agreed to spread the word of our graveyard veggies. I reported back to the merchant a day later saying we have her support, and with a good rapport with my business partner, I asked him to be a part of our Bring Back the Water sermon. He worried about seeing his brother, the bishop, after such a long time, but he agreed, and that's all that matters to me. For the next 20 days, that's right, from days 190 to 210, I decided to turn my attention to the weird and wonderful world of embalming. Essentially what embalming does is change the property of skulls in either a corpse or a zombie. First and foremost, I had to get myself set up. What that meant was spending days upon days collecting resources, using the church basement to craft the materials to create the injections, then storing them in mortuary racks I had set up in the morgue. Not only did I pop the alchemist achievement for discovering 10 recipes, but I ended up building 3 upgraded embalming tables over this time, and settling on 4 injections. These injections I had handpicked to try and maximize the work efficiency of my zombies, or at the very least maximize the white skulls I'd have on a corpse for the graveyard. So I made 50 glue injections, 50 lye injections, 50 silver injections, and 50 gold injections. Naturally, getting 200 different injections is what took up most of my time, but I'll run you through the process. I figured out that I needed a corpse to have 2 red skulls before I started embalming. The acid injection would add 1 white skull, the lye injection would add 1 white skull and 1 red skull, the silver injection would take away a red skull and add 1 white skull, then the gold injection would take the remaining 2 red skulls and add the other 2 white skulls. It's important to note that if you only have 1 red skull, then the gold injection won't work. You need the corresponding red skulls for the injection to work. With this system set up, I began what I like to call the zombie takeover. These injections would boost the zombies' work efficiency way beyond what we were working with before. So I started to swap out the older zombies for the embalmed ones, only to put the older zombies through the same process to eventually go back out into the world ready to work even harder. In this time, I set up the garden with 3 zombies alongside a zombie working the crate making. I had a zombie working the crates in the tunnel, so now that whole process was automated. I had zombies all working the vineyards up on Witch Hill. Eventually my attention turned to the quarry, and you bet I got a perfect set of zombies working their little butts off up there. And because I had made so many of each injection, I wasn't running out anytime soon. I made 4 more random text generators and set up 4 more zombies there too. I should also note that somewhere in there I got the more green points achievement. Okay, so that was a lot. Let's just take a second. We're now here on day 223, lighting some candles for another weekly sermon. I'll admit that learning the ins and outs of embalming, then using it to create a highly efficient zombie working army was quite the feat. But believe it or not, we're not far off from completing the main game. So hold on to your hats, folks, because we're taking off full steam ahead right to the end. After grinding it out in the dungeon, I managed to clear level 10, giving me the scary dungeon depth achievement, and Snake wanted me to get him a golden apple. I knew Clotho sold one, but it costs like 10 gold, so that's a no-go. But I assumed I'd find it in the dungeon somewhere. It's with a heavy heart I admit I got the achievement Mac Player while trying to make it through the dungeon a few days later. You get it for dying 7 times. But I needed it for the 100% anyway, so I totally meant to do it. Then a couple of days later, having pretty much not left the dungeon unless it was to empty my inventory, I made it to the end of the dungeon itself, picked the golden apple from the tree, and popped the achievement Nothing Underneath. I handed over the apple to Snake, who for some reason let me lick it. Surprisingly, I was rewarded for doing so, and I got a bunch of blue tick points. The final task now was to get a dark heart for the ritual to work. However, to get a dark heart, I needed to push the Inquisitor's questline along. It was on day 238 that my business partnership with the merchant had shown its true worth. I bought aristocratic status from the Royal Services box for 12 gold, giving me full access to the aristocrat papers that I needed. The following day, I found myself, that's right, selling beers and burgers while we watched on as a witch burned. I spent all week setting this up, so this better be worth it. Plus, I got the Not a Hot Dog achievement. Also, I just want to point out, I've been embalming corpses and burying them in the graveyard with marble decorations. It's not important, but again, I just wanted to share nonetheless. Now that I had aristocratic prestige, I let the bishop know the keeper of the king's kitchen would be attending our ceremony. Their first interaction seemed pretty sweet. Inside the cathedral, I performed our Bring Back the Water sermon while the congregation watched on. The people loved my speech, and more importantly, it brought back two brothers together. As the brothers reunited in their happiness for each other, they both handed over their magical items to me, the Mirror of Pride and the Salty Fork. And now I can tick off 2 of the 6 magical items I need to open the portal on Witch Hill. Aristocratic prestige meant I was able to sign off Alyssa's papers for Miss Charm. There's only one problem though, she doesn't have a new love song for the concert. However, I did know of a poet worthy of the task. I told Wagner about this once in a lifetime opportunity, and Wagner being Wagner needed a little bit of liquid courage. Using an alcohol distiller, I made some booze, then infused it with some red mushrooms to give it some kick. I ran back to Wagner and the poet was filled with inspiration. I'll come back later to see how he's going. Only I didn't find him back in the Dead Horse. I stumbled upon him a couple of days later along the coast, and the infusion did not go down well by the looks of things. He handed over the song lyrics not before being found by a group of Mountain Fort guards, and the Lord Commander's son was dragged off to be imprisoned. While I formed a plan to save Wagner, I sold some more drinks and snacks to the village people while we watched another witch burning. Starved for entertainment is all I'm gonna say. Skipping ahead to day 248, I paid a visit to Miss Charm again to hand over the song lyrics, and for doing so I got the ideal song achievement. Miss Charm was so taken back by how beautiful the song was that she couldn't help but fall in love. I did have to break it to her that Wagner was being held captive at the mountain fort, but she was determined to go and set him free, so I agreed to find a way to help. I was hoping today would be the last time I'd have to make a spectacle out of a witch burning. But it did give me some profits, so I just wanted to know how to get the dark hearts, that's it, I swear! A day later I met up with the astrologer. Helping save Wagner could be the thing to help redeem himself in the eyes of his daughter. Also, I found out that the astrologer was the one who caused this devastating great blast. I'm just gonna blow over that, I guess. I handed over the silver quality book so that he could regain the trust of his peers at the university, so that he could get permission to do a quote-unquote expedition to the mountain fort. This is also when I built the meditation spot. This spot will speed up time, meaning I can now skip over the boring days and get back to the action ASAP. I stayed in this trance until day 257. I said 7. Definitely not 2. Only coming out to find the Inquisitor. The bad news was the king may be possessed. Like the video if you too think someone is possessed when they start talking about equal human rights. He felt it unnecessary to grab people and burn them alive without evidence, which is fair, but to prove the king wrong, I'd have to bring the Inquisitor evidence. Evidence in the form of dark body parts. But before I could get knee deep into dark intestines, I wanted to see how the astrologer did. It sounded promising, but they wanted a sequel. No, not a Furnace 2, but a gold quality book, which I handed over to him and I got the bestseller achievement. As the week drew on, I repeated the same process. Meditate, grab a body, look for dark body parts, and chuck them in the grave. Rinse and repeat. I did get a dark brain and some dark intestines, so it was working. Before I knew it, the astrologer was back. My words won over the university faculty and he was reinstated as a professor. He asked I show some aristocrat papers, and you bet I already had them on hand. Then began the royal expedition. Alongside the astrologer and Miss Charm, we made our way past the garden into the mountain fort. We came across Wagner nearby, caged up next to a camp of sleeping soldiers. The astrologer used some lockpicks to get him out, but in our attempt to escape we stumbled into the Lord Commander. Things were not looking good, but the astrologer put his daughter first. I got the achievement Prodigal Father for reuniting him with his daughter, and Miss Charm gave one first and final kiss to Wagner. All of a sudden though, he changed back to his normal self, and confronted his father for almost having us all killed. Wagner gave the necklace to Miss Charm, who ended up giving it to me, and the astrologer gave me the golden angle, which left me with 2 more magical items to collect. So I went back to searching for dark body parts. I wasn't having much luck, but I continued to bury bodies in the graveyard. Seriously, I was getting everything but a dark heart, of which I needed 2 actually. On the contrary, I am glad that I kept burying bodies because that night I got the Shovel Master achievement for laying 50 corpses to rest. Thankfully, it was only a day later when I got my first dark heart, and now that I had at least one of each dark body part, I gave them up to the Inquisitor for his evidence against the king. That also unlocked the match 3 achievement. A few days later, I happened upon another dark heart from a juicy corpse that I finally gave to Snake, and now everything was ready for his big ritual. With his followers gathered, Snake called out for his father to appear, and in front of us all appeared the Inquisitor. He seemed a bit skeptical at first. Makes sense, he just got summoned from God knows where, but soon came to the realization that Snake, or Seth, was in fact his son. I got the father and son achievement for reuniting another pair of long-lost family members. Snake gave up his endless notebook and the Inquisitor his eternal burning coal, and I now had every magical item to open the portal. On day 281, I threw Jerry under the bus in front of the Inquisitor to unlock the He Trusted You achievement, and it was on day 282 that it all came to an end. With all the magical items in my pocket, I walked up the side of Witch Hill and to the portal on top. I crafted both the emitter and the barrel and waited for the portal back home to open up. Jerry found me before heading home to tell me the portal isn't just for travelling, it can also make your heart's truest desire come true. The reunited pairs of villager visitors came to visit me, telling me of their problems, telling me despite their dire situations, they'd stick together through it all as changed people. My wish finally came true. The portal opened in front of my very eyes, and through it came my love. Reunited at last. And there lies the end of the main game. There's still a bit of time left in the video, so you're probably wondering what now? Well, it's come to that part of the video where it's time for... This is the part of the video where I stop having fun and put my nose to the grindstone to collect the last achievements for that 100%. Don't worry, of course I'm still having fun, but I'm not counting days anymore, because screw that. I'll just let you know what day we finish on. First up, I wanted to finish the base game achievements before I started on all of the DLC, so let's get into it. In the kitchen, I got to work making and cooking a bunch of different dishes that I hadn't cooked before, which gave me the achievements Kitchen Boy, Cook, Taste Like Home from eating a fish stick, and Chef for cooking 30 different dishes. Next up, I ticked off the achievement Master Alchemist down in the church basement. This one was for discovering 20 alchemy recipes. I went outside for the next few because they involved fishing. The first one I got was Fish Collector, and followed that up by catching the rarest fish in the game, a goldfish. You have a 5% chance to hook it at night. Pretty slim chances if you ask me. Despite that, I did catch one and I got the goldfish achievement. I carried on catching fish in other spots and got the ichthyologist achievement. Wow. If you know what that means in the comments, please let me know. Then came the most mind-numbing achievement of them all, Brutal Fisherman. This achievement has you catch 200 fish. And I swear to you, I spent a good real-life hour here catching gudgeon and the odd bream every now and again. Eventually, I did pop the achievement, but at what cost? The final 3 achievements weren't nearly as bad. Healthcare I got from purchasing a bunch of health potions from Clotho and drinking them. More blue points I got from studying a bunch of things and crossed my fingers that it would just be enough. Then finally I got Sashimi Master for taking out 30 pieces of flesh from corpses. Now with all the base game achievements ticked off, it was time to move on to the DLC. The first DLC to kick us off was the Better Save Soul DLC. Summed up quickly, Better Save Soul is a pretty short storyline that follows the Graveyard Keeper helping cure this guy named Yurik. On top of that, there's this new technology that lets you take souls from bodies, heal them, then send them off to the land of the dead. So that's fun. The first achievement I got was Strange Delivery, which I got when meeting Yurik for the first time. Right after that, I was introduced to Smiler the Ghost, who was going to help us work this old technology, and up popped the Locked Ghost from the past achievement. I helped Yurik settle into his hideaway room under the cellar, and for doing so I got the A Habitable Room. In the room I found a long lost piece of the cathedral, and once it had gone up, I got an achievement for it. To help cure Yurik, I'd have to charge sin shards from 6 bad people. And well, I think I know of 6 bad people to charge them with. First was the bishop with the Sin of Pride. I got an achievement for that. I then started Yurik's treatment in the cellar, which, to be fair, looked pretty archaic. But never to mind, I got the first session of Curing Therapy. Next up was the Inquisitor, who charged my shard with Wrath, and I unlocked a Controlled Ignition, and the Merchant shortly after that to charge another with the Sin of Gluttony. I unlocked a Fortunate Gift for doing so. It was time for Yurik's second round of treatment, which went about the same as the first time. At least I got an achievement for it though. The final 3, Sloth, Lust, and Envy, were tied to the Astrologer, Mischarm, and Snake respectively. The third round of treatment made him feel as if a part of him had vanished. Whether Whether that's good or bad is really up in the air, but I did get the 3rd session of curing therapy, so I guess everything's okay. It was not okay. Turns out Yurik went berserk on the village and now everyone's a little pissed off. It would be rude of me not to help, so I did. I cleaned up the whole village, top to bottom, unlocking the Help the Villagers achievement. The final thing to do in the Better Save Soul DLC was to send Smiler off to the land of the dead. He's given up his wisdom and deserves to move on now. Return to the Beginning was the final achievement left to get. It took me just under 3 hours to beat, and I give it a 7.5 out of 10. On to the next one! The Game of Crone DLC is probably the most story-driven DLC out of the 3. It follows a camp of refugees trying to survive against the Inquisition from town as their prison escapees, and it's my job to keep them alive, armed and happy, alongside a donkey revolution. I would delve more into the story, but I'm just here for the achievements at this point, and this video is already way too long anyway. That being said, let's clean up some achievements. The Face of the Enemy achievement I got for exposing Master Alaric as a vampire. Crazy start, I know. The next 2, to stop an ancient curse and blood supplier, I got for agreeing to help Alaric and giving him blood. He has a very tragic backstory. I told Heradric the vampire problem was gone, and I popped an achievement for that too. Building wells, tents, and providing food and water got me the next achievement, Camp. As I watched a scene of a mysterious woman in black and gold robes, I unlocked Mysterious Woman. I awoke one morning to someone in my home. That woman is named Beatrice. She's a part of the Inquisition looking for the refugees, and she is not a nice woman, but I did get an achievement for it. Down in the dungeon, I needed help from a spirit to figure out who the mysterious woman was. I got the Spirit Summoner achievement and was told of the Misty Quagmire. Fun fact, that's where the Necronomicon was made. A while later, I had done a great job of improving the refugee camp, which gave me Developed Camp, and Marquis took me to the Misty Swamp. Here is where we found the Spirit's lost leg and a charred vampire shoe. Back home, we were ambushed by stone golems all over the place, but after slaying the last one, I got the Exterminate achievement. For a while after, I helped Donkey finish his revolution. I unlocked the final 2 achievements attached to this side quest, Ideologist of Revolution and Long Live the Revolution. The Shepherd and I then interrogated Vampire Carl to try and get some answers. Up popped Awkward Interrogation. It turns out this mysterious woman killed the 4th Keeper to trigger the ancient curse. Shane was watching that night and told me it was her sister who wore the black and gold robes. Clotho was the mysterious woman. With Master Alaric, I tried to repair her memory with some dark magic by answering all her conscious riddles, and for doing so I got the Between Worlds achievement. But the Inquisition was coming. I helped Marquis fortify the camp where the Strength Encamped achievement popped. A while later, Lady Beatrice dropped a bombshell. I had the option to cooperate with her, and doing so would mean I would save the refugees' lives. So I agreed to get her the emulsions because I needed my refugees alive. A day later, I gave her the emulsions of death. She promised the refugees would be safe from the threat of the Lord Commander, and Marquis was thrilled to hear of the news. For my decisions, I got the Refugees a Safe achievement. The final 4 achievements were all based around the camp and its inhabitants. I helped the Undertaker and got Beheaded Horse. I helped the Cook and got Raccoon Thyroid Stew. I unlocked the achievement Paradise for reaching the maximum camp rating. Then the final one was More Forest Thugs for helping the Tanner. Overall, a very enjoyable DLC. It took me a little over 5 hours to complete, and I give it an 8 out of 10. On to the last one! The Stranger Sins DLC can be summed up as running a tavern to cover up the fact that there's a time machine under it. Look, it's a little bit more complicated than that, I'll admit. The first 3 achievements to get were Landlord, Talking Skull, and Employee of the Month. I got these for purchasing a piece of land under Dig's name, building the Talking Skull Tavern, and letting Yorick become my full-time free labour bartender. As for the time machine, well, I have to collect artifacts in order to view memories of the past. We're trying to figure out how Jerry fits into all of this history, and for watching my first memory, I got the Forward to the Past achievement. While collecting artifacts, I put on a comedy show at the tavern and unlocked Open Mic. After a few more flashes to the past, the achievement Witnessed Him popped up. I got my tavern's quality up to 20 and was happy to see the achievement for that too. I watched a nation divided between worshipping the Master and the ancient god, and got a nation divided the achievement. A while later, I got my tavern's quality up to 40 and popped another achievement for that. I added rat racing to the tavern's activities series, and for that I got the Rat Race achievement. In the flashbacks, I watched the bridge to the land of the dead be destroyed, and for that I got Viva la King. The flashback of the original ancient contract being signed by the ancient god Haradric, Cresvold, Dig, and a few others got me the read before signing achievement. The memory after that was of Chain visiting Haradric while they built the church for the very first keeper, which is pretty full circle actually, that's kinda cute. My tavern hit a quality rating of 80, unlocking the Epic Skull achievement. I put on a concert headlined by our very own Miss Charm, and put on an Alco party, both of which got me achievements. I then threw the best version of each activity by providing beers and food at the Alco party, the comedy show, a concert with Miss Charm, and a rat race, and I got 4 achievements for hosting 4 excellent events. You won't actually believe this, but we only have one more achievement to get. It's called The Show Must Go On, and it's to organize 15 events. So I threw a bunch of Alco parties to celebrate the end of this incredible journey, and there it is, the final achievement. As for the Stranger Sins DLC itself, I thoroughly enjoyed this DLC. It took me just under 5 hours to complete, and I'm gonna give it a solid 9 out of 10. My wonderful people, we have done it. After 487 days in this world of Graveyard Keeper, we managed to unlock all 125 achievements this game has to offer. Our journey to get here certainly hasn't been a short one, nor has it been easy. To think all the way back to the beginning, when we were just a newbie Graveyard Keeper trying to find a way home to our love. The monumental journey we have had, making friendships, turning the undead into helpers, reuniting families, learning about the past and where it may take us in the future, and most importantly, getting every single achievement along the way. I have had an absolute blast playing through this game, and I hope that you've had just as much fun watching along. If you did, then all I ask is you leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel, as it helps me out a lot. And with that, there is not much else to say, except you're all wonderful people, so have a wonderful day, and thanks for watching.